really lovely to be here out in nature.
Yes,
Fresh air and all the wonderful sounds of nature out here. And I'm just really pleased to be with you all here, Unity of Fredericksburg. And my title for today is called Calibrate Your Spiritual GPS. So, is there anyone here who uses GPS? Isn't it fascinating that in the space of, I would say, less than a generation, we've come from needing to read maps to using GPS just as a matter of course, right? So I want to give you a little history about GPS, just to kind of give us some framework. How are things looking on your end, Chris, as far as like this?
Perfecto.
Okay.
Perfecto.
So, GPS stands for Global Positioning System, correct? And the development was launched in the United States in 1973. Many of us were alive then when that started, right?
Oh, yeah.
And it was initially developed for use by the United States military. Became fully operational not until 1995. And the inventors of GPS was a collection of people because isn't it true that we so often work best as a collective? So like pooling all of our resources and our brilliance together. So it was a physicist named Roger Easton, an engineer named Ivan Getting, an aeronautics professor named Bradford Parkinson, and a female African-American mathematician named Gladys West, who developed all of the computational techniques for detecting satellite positions with the precision needed to operate GPS.
No kidding.
And so now we can just, tap on our phone and say, take me to Alum Springs Park, and here we are. So I just kind of like to look at GPS and how it works and how we can sort of relate that to our own spiritual lives. So, are you ready?
Ready.
Yeah.
Excellent. So, the first thing that GPS does is determine where we are right here, right now. And this is pretty important, right? Pretty important from a spiritual perspective that we acknowledge where we are right here, right now. That we accept where we are right here, right now. We might have some ideas of how we want things to be different, but we need to acknowledge what our current situation is, because imagine if we don't. So let's say what if your GPS can't actually get a fix on where you are? Can it tell you where to go? No. So in your own life, if you are not acknowledging what your current situation is, if you're not accepting what your current situation is and all the parameters, you're not going to be able to guide yourself forward in an effective sort of way. So, some signs that you might not be cluing in with, in really using your spiritual GPS. So, pretending you're fine when you're really not.
Mm-hmm. That's a good one.
Not really like anyone. Anyone?
Yeah.
Like, oh, I'm just gonna pretend like everything's fine when actually it's not fine right now. So focusing on wonderful stories of the past and how it used to be in the past, and just dreaming about, oh, we just need to have that back again. Anyone? Yeah, some of us are inclined. One of the tools that I like to use to sort of gauge those things is the Enneagram. I don't know how many of you are familiar with the Enneagram, but we could, as an opportunity, like do a workshop on the Enneagram, because there are certain kinds of people who are always referencing the past to provide a story for themselves as to where they are right now. But if you're all caught up in the past, your spiritual GPS is not able to, accurately give you a direction going forward when you're all thinking about the past, right? Same thing goes with people who are fixated on the future. What's next? Being anxious about what's next, trying to plan what's next. Because let me ask you, is there anyone here who's able to predict the future? You don't think so?
Not really.
So you are obsessively trying to plan for what's next and not really kind of being in where you are right here, right now. That's a sign that you're not really using your spiritual GPS to its fullest capacity. So if you're in the past, in the future, if you are really fixed on what's wrong all the time and not acknowledging what is going well and what you're grateful for, that's also a sign that you're not really using your spiritual GPS the way you could. Because you get into a habit. You get into a habit of sort of listing out, getting up in the morning and listing out all the things that you don't like about the world and what's going on. Whereas if you are focused on what you're grateful for, then you're more in sync with your spiritual GPS. If you are too busy and not really enjoying the good stuff in your life. Anybody ever fall into a pattern of busy, just busy doing all the things on the list, on the calendar, and not even taking a breath to be in your current moment right here, right now? So that's another sign that it's like you're not really using your spiritual GPS, because your spiritual GPS needs to start with what's right here and right now. Now, we don't want to be about those patterns because that's just the way our human brains work. Our human brain is here to manage this outer life for us. So we don't want to be beating ourselves up for the fact that your human brain is there wanting to make plans for you and wanting to remind you of what went wrong in the past and all those kinds of things. That's perfectly natural, and you don't want to be beating yourself up about it or, being down on yourself for having what's a really natural pattern of your brain. The point is that you want to always be checking in with your spiritual GPS as the true guidance system for what you're doing, rather than being in totally under awareness of what your human brain provides you, which is just, what your eyes and ears are showing you, what's on the news, what your neighbors say, all those kinds of things. It's really easy to just dive into that and forget to check in with your divine nature. It's really easy for that to happen, right? So don't beat up on yourself about it. Just remind yourself that you need to check in regularly and acknowledge where you are, what's going on, what's good about it, what's not good, but be with whatever feelings are coming up. Accept where you are. Okay, this is the way it is right now, and would I like for it to be better? Would I like to change this or that? Yes, but be willing to kind of be in the moment, and so from there you can develop practices that will help you move through things rather than skipping around or avoiding or all those kinds of things. So the second thing about GPS, which I think is a great reminder, is how does GPS work? Like when I talked about the different people that developed GPS, the mathematician that did all of the calculations, and GPS is constantly talking to satellites.
Right.
Constantly. It's talking to a number of satellites to go, okay, where are you? And as you move around, it's talking to satellites all the time. So we have our human nature and we have our divine nature. And this is a very fundamental reminder that your true guidance system is meant to be your divine nature. It's meant to be your connection with all that is, or that which some of us call God. That checking in is what's meant to be your guidance system, not what's on the news. So this is just a basic reminder of like, oh, here's how GPS works. That's how I'm supposed to be working too. I'm supposed to be in a continual process of checking in with my divine nature and having a spiritual practice. So some of us have an established spiritual practice. So that might be meditation, or it might be gardening, or it might be...
It's a bluebird, I
have
think.
A bluebird visiting. I see it, yeah.
Oh.
So So this might be a reminder to refresh your spiritual practice or to lean into a spiritual practice. I like to be like gentle and easy with all of us when it comes to spiritual practice too, because your spiritual practice might be that time when you are very quietly washing dishes by hand.
Yeah.
And you're just quieting the mind and being in some, repetitious emotion or something like that. So give yourself credit for whatever it is that you're doing. But as we talk about this aspect of the GPS checking in with the satellite, it's also a reminder to you that you might want to try something different or freshen it up or try some yoga or just something, based on what your situation is right now. Maybe if I tried, just walking in nature. Here we are out at the park, so just walking in nature is a wonderful spiritual practice. All right. So the third thing that GPS does, of course, is kind of tell us our next step forward towards where we want to go. But that raises an important question. Sometimes it's hard for us to determine where it is we want to go. Is that true? So it's like, wait a minute, how do I know where I want to go? Now, this is another aspect in which our human brain will just rush right forward and start providing you.
Yeah.
So, you might have an arrogant kind of brain. It's like, I've got this. Anybody have that? Like, oh, your brain is like, I know how to do this. I always know how to do this. Your brain might tell you stories like, this is what we did before, so that was successful before, so you should just do this again. Of course, that doesn't get you out of your comfort zone, does it? Your brain will also remind you of all the things that went wrong in the past. Oh, because say you are having an inclination to, I don't know, I'm making up, like write poetry or something like that. And then your brain immediately will come forward and go, yeah, but remember when you were 17 and you tried that and it was horrible.
Right.
And so your brain is trying to be helpful, but it's not serving you in a spiritual sort of way. It also, your brain might be holding some reminders from way a long time ago. Like you're not good enough, you're not smart enough, things like that. So that's why it's really important for us to have a spiritual practice so that we can quiet down. And we can even use our spiritual practice to take the charge off of those and let them go so that we can engage our spiritual GPS. So your human brain is not meant to be in charge of your spiritual life. It's meant to be your spiritual GPS. So how do we engage more with our spiritual GPS? Now, some of us who come to Unity have a cultural background in Christianity. Anyone here have that background? So some of us like to refer to scriptures, and so I always like to include a little bit of that, so it's like, okay, I get that. So let's look at an example that's provided by Jesus, all right? So from Matthew 6:6, here's Jesus telling us how to do this. Go into your room and pray to your Father who is in secret. Your Father who sees in secret will reward you. So let's just unpack that a little bit. Number one, by yourself, go to your room and shut the door. So this doesn't mean consult the news, consult your neighbor, consult, it by yourself. Here's Jesus saying, this is something you do on your own, friends. You do in your own space of your divine nature. Now, it says your Father, or I like to just use the word source, because then it doesn't hook up with like an image of a man or something like that. Your source in secret, because only you know the nature of your awareness of source. I don't know what that is for you. You don't know what that is even for your best friends or children or partners. You don't know that. You only know that in your space of your divine awareness. And then there's Jesus saying, your source who sees in secret will reward you. So in other words, the answers, the inspiration, the things that you discover are also within your own consciousness. So, we might spend plenty of time listening to a Sunday talk, or reading a book, or, lots of things like that. But ultimately, it is that time that you spend, again, in your spiritual practice, whatever that is. Say it's gardening, or maybe it is meditating or journaling or something like that, where you are communing with your divine nature, your higher self, your awareness of source, or if you like to use the word God, your awareness of that which we call God. So there's Jesus being pretty clear about how you do this so that you can have your divine nature being in charge of your spiritual GPS rather than what you heard from the neighbors or what's on the news. Because again, I want to be bashing on our human brains too much. Our human brains will also, when it comes to where do I want to go, what do I want to do, your human brain is going to want to have a fixed goal. And there'll be lots of messages out there in the world encouraging you to have a fixed goal. Anyone ever encountered that where it's like, okay, we're going to accomplish it, you've got to have a goal, you've got to measure, all those kinds of things. And that is a fine way to manage your outer life. We're talking about managing your experience. So when you're managing your spiritual experience, having a notion in your mind that you want a red car that is of this kind and has this gas mileage is not very helpful in your spiritual life, is it? That's something your brain might be like, yo, I really want to have that car.
Right.
So what I suggest when it comes to managing your spiritual GPS and your spiritual life is that what you set as goals and aspirations are how you want to feel in a certain arena. Let's say it's a work arena. And let's say in that arena you would like to, you're not in a place where you're feeling confident, where you're feeling at ease, so that becomes your goal. Now your human brain again will want to just trot on forward with all kinds of ideas of what you can do.
Right.
And isn't that wonderful? But just take a deep breath, go into your room, close the door, and allow your spiritual practice to give you some space around whatever it is that how you want to feel. Because as soon as you allow your human brain to latch onto a specific outcome, then your human brain will no longer see any other opportunities than that. As soon as you have that red car in mind, you're not going to see any of the silver cars or the blue cars or the green cars that might work really well for you because you've hooked onto a specific outcome. But if your desire is to have, say, reliable transportation, then there's a myriad of ways in which that could show up. It might show up in a partner who gives you rides places because maybe you have an injury so you can't drive the car right now or something. So there are all kinds of possibilities, but as soon as you're latched into one, then your brain's not going to see any of the other possibilities. So Unity wonderfully gives us some wonderful tools that we can use in this process. And I'm sure many of you have heard of them. The old term for one would be denials.
Yes.
I use the term intentional release because denial just has too many hang-ups in modern language.
Yeah.
Anybody who's studied psychology, it's like, being in
denial. Yeah.
So I like to use the phrase intentional release. So when you're using an intentional release around an issue that you have coming up, you are ceasing to give power to whatever, to thoughts that, like, I can't afford that. Well, I'm not going to give it any power to that thought. So, and then affirmations are the partner to that. Once you've released energy around something, and we could do a whole talk about that, so I'm just kind of glossing over here. But you follow that up with an affirmation, which is like, all right, once we've kind of pulled the weeds, what we've determined to be a weed, in our lives, like this plant that's growing in the back there that says I'm not good enough, I need to pull that out of my garden. And then you want to replace with something that is growing something that you want. So I'll give you an example. Let's say you are having an experience of lack of some sort. So a very generic but effective denial, intentional release is I give no power to thoughts and feelings of lack or limitation. And then follow it up by saying, my life is a joyful expression of abundance, and I am grateful. So another example, let's say you're experiencing conflict in a relationship, any kind of relationship. Again, to kind of take the charge off of that, I give no power to thoughts and feelings that something or someone is against me. My life, I am loving. Practical tools so that we can be using what I'm calling our spiritual GPS, so that our divine nature is in charge of what's going on. So use your spiritual GPS to acknowledge where you are right now. So even if where you are is feeling sad or injured or put upon or whatever it is important that we manage our human lives, that we acknowledge what's going on so that we can take care of ourselves. So we use our spiritual practice for that, and we have all kinds of ways to do that, right? To just be present and allow ourselves some comfort and some support. Engage your spiritual GPS by having a regular spiritual practice, right? So whatever that is. And use your spiritual GPS to excuse your human nature and your human brain from thinking that it's in charge of everything. Just give it, and your human brain from thinking that it's in charge of everything. Just give it a break, give it a pause, say you just take a seat, just relax, have a beverage or something, because we're going to step into allowing our spiritual, divine nature to be in charge of determining next steps and determining where it is that we're going. So that's it for my talk today. What we're going to do is move into a little time of meditation together. So I'm going to use a modernized version of something that's known as the Charles Fillmore Invocation. So this is a wonderful statement that Charles Fillmore wrote. It's, as we move forward in time, our awareness around language changes, and so this is a modern version of that. So if you would, just take a couple of deep breaths where you are, whatever it is that you're doing. Just take a few deep breaths. We're out here at the park, so if it's good for you to have your eyes remain open so that you can find the little bluebird that's out there, or whatever it is that's working for you. And listen to these words. I am presence of pure beingness, emanating the activity of divine life, love, and wisdom. I am expressing all that God is. I use divine wisdom and release to renounce my mortal limitations and beliefs. I utilize divine substance and pure love to bring my experience into manifestation according to divine order. Divine order in our language that we have inherited is expressed as Father, Son, Holy Spirit. Divine order as we express it now is mind, idea, expression. So as we move into a few moments in the stillness, just lean into that process that you are expressing in every moment of every day through your connection, your awareness of source, moving that into your divine nature and your consciousness, and moving it out into the world as you express all that is in all of your words and deeds. So let's stay for a few moments in the stillness together. As we begin to bring our awareness back to the current moment, just pay attention to everything that you can hear in your environment right now. All of those little background noises. Allow your eyes to drift open and just take in the quality of the light in the space that you're in. Feel your body resting on whatever surface you are sitting on or laying on. Just pay attention to your feet, and your legs, and your seat, and your arms, your acknowledging what is right here and right now present. And all the wonder that is present here. All of the wonderful elements of this moment, right here, right now. And we're going to close out with an affirmation. Let me say it for you and let it sink in for a second. I embrace the blessing of here and now, and joyfully step forward in faith. Let me say it for you again. I embrace the blessings of here and now, and joyfully step forward in faith. Can you say it with me now?
I embrace the blessings of here and now, and joyfully step forward in faith.
Put your hand right on your heart space. And let's say it again, or both hands, whatever's comfortable for you. Let's say it again with some vigor. I embrace
the blessings of here and now, joyfully step forward